I try to express this constantly is if you're gonna have this conversation, please do it over the phone or in person.
Yes.
The texting wars that some of y'all be having.
Paragraphs.
It's no one is reading your novel.
Words are easily misconstrued.
That. Also, like, they can ignore you. Which they do. Which they do. And when they do ignore you, it's only gonna piss you off more. Sending, you did this and it made me feel like this and da-da-da-da-da. They literally might be like, not today, and not respond. And rightfully so, because if someone sends me a novel, I really might look at it and be like, I'm not with it today. I'm not with it. Like, I'm sure what I did was wrong, but like, who's doing this? Like, I'm not gonna get into the texting World War III with you over some minor discrepancy that got you all worked up. You know, like, we can talk about this like over the phone. Like, okay. Welcome to the Safe Space Podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Rosant.
And I'm Aicha Sabara. And we're back again with another episode for you guys. We have a pretty interesting topic that we think you guys are really going to like. And Sydney, would you like to intro that topic in?
Yeah, I don't know how to put it into a concise like sentence or phrase, but I would say like we kind of want to talk about what it's like to be the friend who is advising your other friend who's like has a significant other, like you're giving advice and stuff like that, because it's kind of sometimes a weird dynamic, because you want to provide a lot of support to your friend, but it can be complicated, I think is the best way to like describe it. And I think that we both have a lot of experience being the friend who is giving advice. So I want to kind of hear like, what has your experience been in terms of being like the basically like de facto relationship therapist for some of your friends?
Yeah, so I was about to say being like the go-to advice friend, because I've said it before in past podcasts. I'm very much like the therapist friend of like most of my friend groups. And so relationship advice is definitely like a go-to in that. And it has its pros and it has its cons. I'll say that. So like, I guess I'll start with pros and ask you about some pros that you see, and then we can go through the cons together. But some of the pros, it's like, one, I think you'll definitely agree. It's always a beautiful thing, like seeing your friends go through that like happy, giddy phase of like, oh my God, like I think I like this person, this and this and that. And it's such a like, it's a refreshing thing to see. And it's also, it can be kind of strengthening for a friendship in general, being that friend, because you know that that person values you. They value you a lot. They value enough to be coming to you for advice in future endeavors, you know? And so I've had a lot of really positive outcomes with that. I've been the friend to put friends on. I've been the friend to help people work through situations. I've been the friend on FaceTime with said person and the significant other at the same time. Like, Aicha, what do you think? What do you think about this situation? Does this sound right? Isn't he wrong? Or like, you know? And it teaches you a lot about limits and boundaries. Because I feel like as friends, you can feel like you can talk to anybody about anything. And sometimes it's hard to set those boundaries. But you will learn what is okay and what's not okay. It teaches you how to interact with that person in general. So for example, if I'm dealing with a friend who I feel like is going into more of a risky situation, it helps communication wise. It helps a lot. It's something that I carry with me, not just advising friends, but like through life. It can be messy waters to like navigate, if that makes any sense. And it's like, I've had so many different friends hit me up on the like, what do you think of this person? I think I want to, and you know, and you have to like think from an objective standpoint, but also be thinking about their happiness. So it's like, it's messy waters. And like, to say the absolute least, I think being that friend, can have its perks and it can really have its downfalls. What do you think? Like,
there, I was gonna say there's no pros, but then you brought up a good point about like getting to see your friend be happy and meet someone, and like I'm always going to root for my friends' relationships. Like I'm always gonna root for not necessarily the person, dependent on their actions, of course, but like when you first meet that person, like I'm hoping that this, however it ends up, is going to be a very positive experience for you. I don't want my friends to end up traumatized. Nobody, sure. Who's wishing that on their friends? Like if you're wishing that on your friends,
that's not a friend anymore.
That's your enemy. But I would say that it's mostly cons after that. I have been that friend for people, and usually I only do it if I'm really, really close to you, or if like you've brought me some people time where you're like, Sydney, you need to tell her that this doesn't make sense. I'm usually that person where I'm like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I don't, because my thing is I don't personally benefit from psychoanalyzing you and this person's interactions, and you're not going to listen to me. Right. And you don't have to, but you're coming to me as if my advice is going to somehow change what you want to do, but it's not. And we both know that it's not. And I also feel like I don't want to be emotionally invested in someone else's relationship. Right. Because I've adopted this mindset, and I think it's helping me in this regard, where it's like, if you like it, I love it.
No, for sure.
If you like this, I love it for you, right? If that's what it is. But like seeing how someone is doing someone dirty and being like, you need to do better for yourself. You need to get yourself out of this situation. This doesn't make sense. Like you don't even sound happy. Like that's not really my job.
Yeah.
At a certain point, like I might say I don't understand it, but there's obviously something that I'm not seeing here. And at that point, I'm like, okay, like, especially because I think something that can be toxic that I feel like I've done in the past is I've done like it's him or me.
Yeah. Yeah. When you feel like you have to give them that ultimatum, not because, oh, I want your attention, but because this situation is so inherently bad that it's like, I can't watch it.
But the issue with that is, now I'm making your relationship
about me,
about myself, and that's selfish.
Yeah.
And that's not fair. And I'm putting more pressure onto someone who's already in probably not a great relationship to make a decision that they're probably not ready to make. And I think that like, that's why I'm like, you know what? I'm not anyone's therapist. I'm not licensed. I've not studied this. I can try and psychoanalyze it. But then I think the other con is that I don't have all the information.
Yeah, it's always bias. We love our friends, we support our friends, but we have to understand that there are things that our friends may do that they are not so proud of, that they're not going to tell us about.
Yeah, and that's okay, but I can't give you an objective viewpoint with biased information given to me, and it's just going to be an echo chamber. And it's like, but if you have so much, because this is my issue. One of the issues that I've like encountered is that if this person is causing you so much trouble, they're so problematic, they're so rude, blah, blah, blah. I don't quite understand why you're still here, but you're not telling me what's going on that's keeping you here. Yeah. You're not really being fully transparent, and that's not... I think that it's almost like it's almost unfair on both sides of the spectrum, because it's like you're expecting me to give you something, some sort of validation. I'm not entirely sure what you're expecting from me, but I can't give it to you because you're not also giving me what I need to fully, or to give you an opinion that is truly going to be helpful. You know what I'm saying? So I'd say that's my take on being the friend who is advising the other friend.
I think that's really fair. I feel like over time, as relationships have become more serious and more prominent in like my life or in my friends' lives, it's definitely shifted my viewpoint on being that friend. And it's shown me that there's like a level of which it's like, this is the basics I'll do for all of my friends. This is the basics I'll do for my close friends. This is the basics I'll do for my best friends. And this is the basics I'll do for like my ride or dies. You know what I mean? And each has a boundary that's set. Because I used to be the friend who would just give you my like unapologetic opinion. I'd be like, okay, this is what I think. Like, just based upon what you're telling me, this is what I'm getting from it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can sound like, I don't want to sound like a broken record.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a broken record because then you're going to get annoyed and I'm going to get annoyed. I'm telling you the same thing on repeat. You're hearing the same thing on repeat and you might not like what I'm saying. So it's like, I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, okay, do you want my advice or do you want a yes man? Tell me now and we can go through this situation accordingly.
Do you even feel like, though, by saying that statement, you're still putting pressure on that person to almost conform to what you're looking for out of them, as opposed to actually just being a support system? Because, like, you can tell by the questions they're asking you or the situations that they're presenting to you that, like, this person's not really looking for me to tell them what's really up. They're looking for me to just confirm, just to justify what they're doing, that kind of thing. Because it's like, now are you just sort of adding to what they're probably already going through?
I don't know. And that's part of the reason why I pose the questions sometimes. Like sometimes if I can just kind of like gauge what it is you're trying to get from this situation, I'll answer accordingly. But if you're like one of my closest, like my closer, like inner circle, I will ask you just to like put like a little like a reflection on you. And it's not meant to stress you, but it's almost as like a protection layer for me. Okay. If that makes sense. Okay. Because it's like, once I've gotten to that point, it's not because I haven't given you advice. It's likely that I've given you advice on this matter multiple times and now it's taking a toll on my mental health. And I don't mind giving anybody advice. I wouldn't offer it or even sit and listen to it if I did. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if we've gotten to this point, it's likely you've asked me the same question on repeat or the same variation of that question. We've seen this situation before. It's obvious that you don't want to do what I'm telling you to do, but you still kind of want to talk about it. And it's like, I don't mind just being an open ear. But if it's going to get to a point where it's like, this is taking a toll on me, I don't like what I'm seeing of like the situation, and I'm not enjoying, not necessarily like myself, but like I'm not enjoying what I'm seeing somebody else put you through. I might get to that point where I'm just like, okay, do you want a genuine answer? Or do you just want me to confirm what you're saying? Because sometimes and they'll be honest about it too. Sometimes they just want to hear somebody say, yes, I think your idea is great. Yeah. And I don't mind doing that. But I'm not going to sit and spend like an hour really unpacking something with you, listening to how you really feel, giving you my genuine opinion, only for you to go and do completely the opposite of what I'm saying.
So then, do you feel like your support plays a role, like at least how much support you're giving to that person, like they should be considerate of that when they're making decisions about their personal relationships?
I think if somebody's taking the time out of their day to ask like your opinion on something, I'm not necessarily saying that they should take that into account. I just think that they should be mindful of it. If you're coming to ask me my opinion, I'll give you my genuine opinion. Okay. You don't need to make a decision based upon what I think. You're the one in the situation. Yeah. I'm not the one living through whatever you're going through. So it would not be fair of me to assume that you do what I would do in that situation. Yeah. That's an unfair burden to put upon anyone. I think, though, the issue presents itself not within the relationship that you're having, but the relationship between us.
Okay.
When the questions become repetitive. Okay. When it's like you're asking me the same thing, you know my opinion. I don't know if it's one of those like you want my opinion to change. I'm not the kind of person who's just going to change my opinion because you asked me the question the wrong way, like a different way. Okay. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying.
So I think it's one of those where it's like you're not. I don't think you should necessarily take what I'm saying and do exactly what I'm saying. I don't want a puppet.
Yeah.
I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want you to treat me as your puppet.
Yeah.
You know? But if I'm giving you my advice, it's because it's genuinely what I think in that situation based upon what you've given me. So I just hope that the person would be mindful of it. Not necessarily do what I want, but just like take what I'm saying and make your own decision based upon based upon the advice that I've given you. Okay. You know? Okay. And I feel like that's fair. In the sense that it's like, if you're asking me my advice, I'm going to give you my advice. Do with that information what you will. I think that's like as basic as I can put it. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense.
I get what you're saying. I think I disagree the part where because like it sounds like you're saying almost two different things where you're saying that like, well, I'm just giving you my opinion, right? And so you let that land wherever it may. However, if it doesn't land where you agree, where you said it should land, right? In your opinion, right? And if they keep coming back to you, is that where your frustration lies? Is in the, I guess like them asking you the question over and over again?
I think it's not necessarily a frustration, if that makes sense. It's not even like necessarily an issue. Okay. My thing is like what I'm trying to say, and I'm not always the best with my words. So like, tell me if this makes any sense. What I'm saying is like, if you ask me for advice, like say you came to me and you're just like, hey, this happened. I want your advice on the situation. I'd tell you what I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just telling you what I think. Do with that advice what you will. Yeah. If I think the issue becomes, and it's not like a relationship issue, it becomes an issue of like, if you're coming to me on the same thing, like this person continues to repetitively do what you said they're doing. Yeah. And you have an issue with it. And I've given you my advice. The advice hasn't changed. It's the only solution I have. It's not gonna change. If you want like a shoulder to cry and you want somebody to just listen to you, that's fine. Yeah. But it's like, I've given you the advice that I can be an open ear, but it's like, also, what are you expecting? Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not like I'm not saying that they need to take my advice. Yeah. Like, I'm just giving it if you ask me for it. No, I get what you're saying, because I feel like I've fallen into that same kind of repetitive cycle where someone is just continuously doing someone wrong, and then you're just like, okay, what else can I tell you? But at the same time, I also feel like relationships are a process. Sure. And so like, having also been on the side of asking for advice, it's like the advice only matters to like a certain extent, right? It's almost like, okay, this is something for me to think about, ponder on, see if that really works for me. But a lot of times, like, that advice and like the weight of that advice and the weight of the relationship itself are almost incomparable, in my opinion, because it's like, you're like, oh, well, she doesn't really know how we are, or it's not really, that doesn't really, there was a good point, a point was made, but I don't feel like it really resonates or is really applicable to my relationship. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that sometimes there is that process that someone has to go through where they like actually get fed up, because sometimes like people can do you dirty and you might still like that person enough to stay. Yeah. And I think that happens a lot, and they can still frustrate you to the point where you're venting to your friends like, this is annoying, they're just annoying me, blah blah blah, but that person still might not be ready to leave just yet. Like I sometimes feel like, especially like when someone likes someone a lot,
there's a leash that person has to a certain extent, and that's not always necessarily a good thing. But I think at our age, it's just kind of the reality, because we're all new or sort of new at relationships. So I think that like now when I'm listening to people and I'm giving advice, I also take into account that the leash that person has is long, and it's going to take probably repeated offense after repeated offense after repeated offense. Like that person has to actually be tired, like really exhausted to the point where they're like, I can't put up with this anymore. And so I think that like for me, if somebody were to come to me repeatedly, at a certain point, I probably would stop giving them advice and I would just listen, because it's like, what's the point? What, like you said, what is the point?
I completely agree with what you're saying. And I've been on the asking side of things. And sometimes relationships are trial and error.
Very much so.
Every relationship is trial and error. There are some that seem more smooth than the others. There are some that are more rigid from the beginning, from the get-go, and they're the roller coasters on the in-between.
Yep.
Every relationship is very much a person-by-person basis. So it's like, I think being the quote-unquote, I always ask as like more of a, to see what kind of conversation we're having it is, if that makes sense. More of like a, okay, are you wanting to vent to me? Or are you wanting advice? Because I don't want to give unrequited advice if you don't want the advice.
Yeah.
That's perfectly, like, I know it's other people's pet peeves. It's one of my pet peeves when people try to give me advice when I didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. So it's like, annoying. I don't ever want, it's like when somebody comes to me on a situation, my first thing is not going to be to give you advice.
Yeah.
It's always going to be, oh, that really happened. This person did that. Or like, I was just kind of like processing how you're feeling about it and whatnot. And when you get to the point of like, what do you think I should do? Then I'll give you my advice. And be like, you know, I feel like it's one of those things where for my friends in particular, I never want one of my friends to feel like they're going through something alone.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes everybody gets like wrapped up in their own worlds that it might feel like that, or, you know, things happen.
They do.
And you might end up in situations like that. But I've had situations where I've felt like I'm completely isolated. I can't talk to my friends about what I'm going through, or just like vent about relationships, life, whatever. So I don't want anybody to feel as though they don't have a support system, period. So it's like, I feel like that's where I was talking about boundaries earlier. That's where they're learned and that's where they're applied.
Yeah.
Because you can see if what you said kind of rubs somebody the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if it's one of your friends, you'll kind of peep it. And you'll know next time, okay, I won't tread on that line.
Yeah.
Like it was never an intention. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. So I think it's one of those things where it's like boundaries in friendship. I feel like people don't implement them.
They do not.
They don't implement them because you don't go into a friendship thinking about what happens when we have some sort of argument. Nobody goes into so they don't think to set boundaries. And, you know, there's like a respectful way to treat somebody and there's a not respectful way. And we all have like a basic understanding of that. But after that, lines get blurred. Yeah. I've gotten to points in friendships where I'm just like, bro, I have to tell you this as somebody who cares about you. I don't like this. I don't. At the end of the day, you do what you got to do, but I don't like it. I've had friends come to me and tell me, Aicha, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I feel like I've done that plenty of times.
Like, Aicha, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Like, and that's what I want from my friends. I want them to tell me when things sound like, hey, we might need to like revisit reality here. Yeah. Like we might not be on the same plane. And in the moment I might not appreciate it, but I'm definitely going to be mindful of it. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. How do you express discomfort with the person they're dating? Like specifically?
Very lightly. Very lightly. Because at the end of the day, you're my friend, not necessarily the other person. And at the end of the day, I care about you and your emotions and how you're feeling. If I'm getting to a point where I even quote like dislike who you're dating or anything like that, or talking to or anything like that, that means me and you probably frequent each other a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you're probably a constant or consistent person in my life. And I think it doesn't matter if I like them or not. Yeah. If that makes sense. I'm the kind of person who, even if I don't like you, I will treat you with respect. Because I would like for you to treat me with respect in return. We may not like each other, but we have a common goal here, and it's that friend. Okay? Like, in different ways. Yeah. But we have a common goal. Yeah. And so anytime, it's one of those where I'm not going to like actively be like, I don't like him. I don't like her. You know, it'll be one of those things where it's like, if you're talking about the person and you're telling me, oh, they did this, I'll be like, I don't really like that. I feel like they should have done better by you in that moment. But it's like, it's not my place. I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. Like, yeah. If you care about a person enough, it doesn't matter. Yeah. If I care about somebody enough, and I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, like, oh, you don't like them. Boo-hoo.
You don't like them, okay. Boo-hoo. That's a you issue. Like,
cry me a river.
Literally. Like,
you could be like, I'm still gonna be with them.
Be like, thank you for, like, thank you. What am I supposed to do with that information? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, when you find somebody you want to be around and you genuinely want to be around them, respectfully, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. At all. So it's like, there's no point in addressing it. I think, it's a messy kind of like scenario. There's very few people who I'm friends with whose significant others I didn't like. And even if I didn't like them, I hang out with them. Yeah. We'd share spaces. I'd kiki. I'd ha. Like, to be honest, it's one of those fake it till you make it situations.
I'm
like,
screaming.
I don't live with you. My friend's the one who's with you. You know, like, they're the ones who are around you 24/7. If I have to hang out with you for a short period of time to be around my friend, I have to do that. You know, it's not really my place. Yeah. How many people do you know whose like parents don't like their significant others? It's not going to stop them.
That's very fair.
If your parents disdain for something or your siblings disdain for something, like your closest people, doesn't matter, then my opinion, I wouldn't expect it to matter. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, if I don't like somebody, I just don't like them. Yeah. And I'll express it. I'll just be like, I don't like that person. I don't like their vibe. And I think I'm big on like, does it match? Right? I'm very big on that. And you can call me shallow or superficial for that. But like, if I look at him and I look at you and I'm like, right? Or not even just looks wise, but it's just like, okay, you're doing all of this stuff with your life. This person is not doing anything. Does it match? No. Not that I dislike that person, but then a lot of times when you have people who are kind of unequal in their purposes, right? And in their ambition, a lot of times that causes chaos within relationships. And I would say like that sort of chaos is the kind of chaos that I'm like, you need to avoid, right? So I'm kind of getting off track a tad bit, but to sort of finish my point, it's like, it's not, my dislike of that person is not personal. Yeah. It's just like, I don't like this person because I don't think this person should be getting this much energy from you. You know what I'm saying? They don't look at all the differences that you have, and then look at with those differences, which should be an X, right? You're still with them, and look at how they're treating you. Now I double dislike.
You're one of the people who don't believe that opposites attract, right?
At all.
Okay, that I feel like that for like clarification. That's why I was asking.
They don't. Well, okay. I disagree. Opposites may attract, but opposites don't work.
I think it depends on what the opposites are in.
Yeah, that's fair, but
like we could have similar personalities, but maybe like we're completely different in our hobbies. I think that kind of relationship could still work.
But I don't consider that to be really opposites. Like I'm talking about like intrinsically, personality wise, who you are is opposed to who that person is.
Can you give an example?
I think a good example is, I mean, I gave an example on that episode. It was like 2 episodes ago. Mm-hmm. I gave an example. I can try to give another. Okay. A good example is a highly ambitious person mm-hmm. and somebody who is like the exact opposite, who's just not ambitious at all. I mm-hmm. don't see how a relationship between those two people works. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's like one person is grinding. They're trying to better themselves in every way, shape, or form. And the other person is just not. You're not aligned in your goals. You're not aligned in your vision, but y'all are supposed to be partners. How can you be partners and not have something? How can you be partners in that way, but you're not building together? And then there's the feeling of like resentment from one to the other. Mm-hmm. The person who's ambitious resenting the unambitious person for being unambitious and not doing anything and not contributing anything and not caring about themselves enough to want to be better. Because if you're unambitious, I feel like you're going to be unambitious in every sector. So you're not going to be trying to be really a great partner. You're not going to try to better yourself as a person or try to get your money up a little bit. You're not going to be doing anything to better yourself, but the other person is completely devoted to bettering themselves. That's supposed to work. Like, and those are like, because there's like opposites in the way that like for example, the person I'm talking to likes anime. Mm-hmm. I don't watch anime. I watch reality television. Those are two completely different, like, you know what I'm saying? Like in that way, it's like, I don't even know if the opposites attract. It's just like, whatever. We just happen to have different interests in that way. But like.
Okay. So let me ask you. Mm-hmm. Just to play kind of like devil's advocate here or whatever. Uh-huh. Let's take those 2 differences or whatever.
Okay.
Would you try to watch anime for him?
I've watched anime. Like, I've just sat and watched it mm-hmm. while he was present. I don't have an aversion towards anime. So I'm not like an anime hater. I just actually can't watch it.
Yeah, but it's not something that you're into.
I cannot. He gonna be mad. I can't watch it.
This is gonna cause a conversation later, guys.
No, because it is a conversation topic. I can't watch it on my own. Like anytime I watch anime, it's been with my brother, my older guy cousin, or him. It's never been like, let me watch Titan. What's that movie? What's that show?
Attack of the Titans.
Let me watch Attack of the Titans by myself. No,
I think I'll turn on. Hear about it.
I think I'll turn on The Bachelorette first. Like,
so it's not something you would go out of your way to do.
Precisely.
But is it something that you could learn to like deal with?
Yes.
Because of your significant other.
Yes. But on the flip side, he hates reality television. Uh-huh. But like, who cares? Like, I just have my.
So sorry. That's so funny.
Like, whatever.
She said, okay.
You just don't have good taste, and that's.
This is gonna cause an argument.
You just don't have good taste, and that's mm-hmm. okay. Like, mm-hmm. It's all right. We can't all be Sydney.
This became a completely different discussion.
No, but I know what you're going. But my point is that like. I feel like you have to be like, compatibility is not about necessarily just your hobbies. Mm-hmm. I think it's about your goals. I think mm-hmm. it's about who you are, like on the inside, right? Like those things matter most. Like the hobby stuff, you can pick up a hobby and drop a hobby mm-hmm. at any time. You know what I'm saying? Like those things are very flexible. The hobbies I had 2 years ago and the hobbies I have now are completely different. Like 2 years ago, I didn't buy a camera and do all this podcast production stuff. Like that was not a hobby of mine at all, mm-hmm. but it is now. So like I can also pick up something else, like anime, for example, mm-hmm. but let's say in a couple of years, I'm like, this is boring. Like this is not it for me. I can drop it and mm-hmm. and move on. Whereas somebody who is unambitious, especially at like once you get to like 20s, mid 20s. I don't know how you turn it on after, right? Like especially something like wanting to just better yourself, right? I feel like that's a completely different conversation, but I feel like now is kind of like the time. So if you just don't care to do that kind of stuff right now, how are you going to be with somebody who is doing that stuff right now? Like, I don't see how that in a relationship works. And that's why a lot of times when I've been critical of my friends' partners, I'm like, your lifestyle, what you want to do, because I'm not friends with bums, what you want to do and how you want to kind of engage in life is the complete opposite of who you're with. Mm-hmm. How is that person going to pour into you? How is that person going to benefit you at all if what they're doing is moving in the opposite direction as you?
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying. I think whenever I'm critical of somebody else's like partner, it's usually not for any of those reasons. It's always just a treatment of you issue, if that makes sense. Like, I don't really care what your partner is doing with their like I will take an interest in it because I will want to get to know that person as like a friend of your friend, you know. But that, I don't think that's the reason why I will have some sort of like aversion to somebody. It will always come down to how you treat that person.
I think it's connected for me.
I think that's
because
fair.
it's my thing is like one thing sometimes leads into another. Like obviously you could find somebody that you're super compatible with, like you're both, you know, striving for like certain goals, and then like that person is just awful to you just because they're not a great person in general, or they're just not a good, you know, partner in general. But like I oftentimes, and this is just my personal experience that's kind of guiding my opinion on this, but like oftentimes when people have two completely different purposes, when they are opposite, and I feel like the ways that cannot really be changed, or take a lot of personal work to change, like I'm talking like therapy, talking like, you know, just like having a full mindset change. A lot of times I feel like those people tend to not be great partners, because it's like you're already starting off on a bad foot. You're already starting off like, I don't want to put anybody's like business out there, but I remember one of my friends was telling me about how the person they were with, like she was in school, he had graduated already, and she was telling me that like he had no plans as far as like what he was going to do with his life. He was just pretty much just sitting at home. And I was like, sitting at home, not just sitting at home, drinking all day, drinking and smoking weed all day. He had a substance abuse problem as well. And so my thing is like, I'm looking at that person. I don't know anything about him, but I'm like, I don't like this. I don't see, and you don't see how this can work in the future. You don't even see how you can build from this. So why are we engaging in it? And lo and behold, he was an awful partner to her. Basically, like, to wrap up the conversations about the conversation about whether or not I feel like opposites attract, it's just more so like you can be attracted to pretty much anyone. I don't know if whether or not the fact that they are opposite of you is what's pulling you in, but I feel like opposites don't work, not realistically.
So opposites can attract, but opposites will never, like, they will continue to repel.
Yeah, it's like water and oil in a way, where it's like they can be in the same bowl at some point in time, but like when you try to mix it, it's one is gonna go its way and the other's gonna go the other way. And oftentimes, like, I feel like I've definitely, and I definitely will express my dislike of a partner to my friend, not because like, oh, you need to leave them, da 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 da, but more so along the lines of like this doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, or just like take you and that person, like it's not mixing. Y'all are water and oil right now. And a lot of times, you know, obviously people are going to try, right? I can only get my 2 cents. And they try, and oftentimes that person is treating them poorly. And sometimes my friend is treating them poorly too.
Yeah.
Right? Like, obviously I'm only looking at that person's behavior. I'm not really critiquing my friend's behavior, but there have been times where like, I'm like, you crossed the line saying this to that person, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like when people are opposite in certain ways, like we talked about ambition and then, you know, talking about like personality traits and stuff like that. Like, I think that can create just a very dysfunctional kind of environment. And I'm a believer in like, okay, some stuff you should just pass up, right? Like some things we don't have to experience. You know how some people are like, you got to try it to know if you like it. It's like, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't have to try it. And so that's probably like my main opinion on that. But I have a question for you. What would you say is like, as a friend, what is the worst advice you think you can give to somebody who's asking for help about their relationship, just like in general? Like, what is the worst, or how about this? Like, what is the worst relationship advice you can give?
The worst relationship advice you can give? I think it kind of touches on what you were talking about earlier with like that kind of ultimatum. I think that is the absolute worst thing you could do to somebody who's coming to you for advice.
For sure.
Like, we've already established that if this person is coming to me for advice, it's because they hold me to some sort of like astute in their life. Like, I'm an important person and they like in their life and they trust my opinion. So for somebody to come to you with an issue and for you to be like, well, it's me or them. Like, it just like getting fed up. Yeah. Like to the point where you're just like, I can't do this. Like getting to the, like, it's one thing to be like, I can't do this. But to be like, it's me or them. I think that's the worst thing you could possibly do, because they're more like 98% of the time, they're going to choose the other person. Yeah. They're going to choose the other person because they feel like you, even if maybe there's some warrant for what you're saying and you're saying it out of the kindness of your heart, whatever, they're going to feel like you're the one who backed them into the corner. So now whatever the other person has done to them is null and void, because that person would never treat you the way that the friend is treating you. That's why a lot of situations, how many times have you heard friends be like, I don't know how I feel about him. He just gave me an ultimatum. Like, that's always the thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my significant other just gave me an ultimatum. Like, you think what do people hate most? Feeling like they lose control. Giving an ultimatum takes all control away from somebody, because you're telling them you're doing what I want or you're losing me. So one way or another, they're losing control. Yeah. That is the worst thing you can do, because now you've isolated that person that you supposedly care about. Now they're running to who you claim is a problem. And that person's gonna support them, because there's no way, if I don't like you, you probably don't like me. Yeah, yeah. You've pushed them towards the quote unquote problem. And in the end, it's gonna look like it's your fault. Every time. It doesn't matter what got you to that point. In the end, you're the one who gave me the ultimatum. Agreed. I definitely agree with that one. The ultimatum is that's bad advice. I think the other bad advice would be like, oh, if it was me, like, I wouldn't take this. You know, what is that thing on TikTok? If it was me, I wouldn't take this kind of disrespect. Like, that's the funniest thing in the world. I feel like it's bad because it's so condescending. Like, okay, but like, I'd be like, okay, but you're not me. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, okay, like, just because there's been plenty of times where I'm like, oof, if it was me, I would not. It could never be me. But to say that to somebody is like you're overstepping, like, because, you know, like, okay, so what, it wouldn't be you. Like, this person's in this situation, like, they got there somehow, but that's not relevant and that's not productive. And you're not actually helping. You're not helping somebody by shaming them. You know what I'm saying? It sounds condescending. It just is, though, because it's like, okay, just because that is the truth doesn't mean that you have to express it, especially when they're asking you for help. How is that going to help them? Like, what if they just don't want to be you? Like, at the end of the day, somebody said, like, the reason they didn't want to be with somebody, I think it was like Lauren Gray. She was like, I'm not going to parent somebody else's kid. Okay. at the end of the day, they're your friend.
Yeah.
That's not your kid. When it's your kid, you can sit there and give them the ultimatum if you want. You can sit there and tell them, if it was me, I wouldn't do that. Why? You brought that kid into the world. Have that conversation with your kid. That's your kid. You are not my kid. You have existed. I'm 21. Most of my friends are between like that 18 to 23 range. Okay. You have existed for the same amount of time as I've existed. As much as I wouldn't want somebody, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. That, or somebody trying to tell you about yourself.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Sorry. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. Like personally, when I'm like talking about myself or talking about something I have going on or something like I feel, and somebody being like, oh, you're like this or you're like that. Biggest pet peeves.
Yeah. It's just like, if the conversation is about helping me to maybe see the bigger picture in my relationship, why are you trying to project like how much better you are and how like your decision making is just so much more advanced than mine when we're probably around the same age. It's not like you're talking to someone that's so much younger than you, right? Like you're talking to somebody that is like, we're talking about like our age mates, right? So it's like for you to be like, oh, if it was me, like who do you think you are? Like now you just sound like you feel superior to that person, and like you also aren't in that relationship. There's a reason why people stay in bad situations, and it's always because like it's not all bad.
Yeah, there's
always something good. Like nobody is crazy enough to stay in a situation where there's literally nothing good. They would have been gone if there's something that they're holding on to. And so like I think that when giving advice, I always try to stay cognizant of the fact that they're not there for no reason. Like I'm not friends with dumb people. So they're very much competent. And so I have to take that into consideration and have grace for that the fact that though it is mentally draining and difficult, that there is they probably still enjoy spending time with that person. That person makes them feel good about themselves and validates them in a way that I actually can't as a friend. So like you said, it's the ultimatum thing. And then there's the like being like, oh, I can never, I personally am not with that, you know? But what would you say is like the best kind of general relationship advice that you can give?
Relationship advice in what way? Like,
just like, what would you say is like the constant thing that like you are usually telling people?
I think the main thing I will always reiterate to any of my friends, any of the people I care about is, one, I think this is just like a standard kind of procedure thing, if that makes sense. So like if I'm talking to you, for example, and you are coming to me for advice, I'm going to be like, okay, so what happened? Okay. Once we get that out on the table, okay, I might have some questions. So clear up some details for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now I have all the details. How are you feeling? Before you give any input of any way, shape, or form, ask how that person is feeling about it. Because it might be one of those situations where they don't need advice.
Yeah.
They might just be upset about an interaction that they had with somebody and they want to vent. Ask how they're feeling about it. One constant thing that you can go just based off of that is, if this is something that you feel like you're okay with, like you can find some sort of common ground for it, I think it's worth just conversating and working it out. Express your point of view to that person, and likely you can come to some sort of conclusion. And if you're just angry about it, like vent to me, girl, like I got you, like that's fine. But it might not be. If you come to me and you're like, there's certain like code words, you know what I mean? Like trigger words where you're like, if somebody comes to me and they're just like, I'm feeling hurt by this person. I'm feeling scared by this person. I'll tell you, you need to listen to your body. You need to listen to your subconscious. You need to listen to those feelings because they're unprovoked. Those are provoked feelings. That's how your body is reacting to whatever situation you're going to. Your body is going to be the best indicator in any situation of what's going on. I might not be able to give you all the information because you might come to me and because of how you feel about that person, because you care so much, the information might not come across the way that it needs to.
Yeah.
I might not hear everything I need to. You might make the situation worse because this person has truly upset you in this scenario.
Yeah.
You might make the situation sound better because you're thinking about the future and after this argument. But one person you can't lie to is yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So listen to yourself, listen to your mental, listen to your body. If you feel some type of way about something, process through that feeling because you're probably feeling it for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say like the best advice that I would generally give is to make sure you're advocating for yourself. I think that is like anybody can tell me anything, and I'm probably going to say something along the lines of like, okay, have you communicated that to them? One thing I've noticed is that a lot of times when my friends will be telling me and expressing stuff to me, like, you know, it's usually very blunt, very like, this made me feel like this, and this is what he did or she did, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but am I the only person who knows about this? Because you're not dating me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the person you're with needs to know those things. So like, if you're not communicating your discomfort to that person, you're not going to be able to work through it because that person's not going to be aware, right? Like, it's a difference when like if something is just constantly happening. At that point, the person is aware and they just don't care. A little rhyme, but like they literally just don't care. They're going to continue doing it because that's probably just who they are, and they don't want to change, or they don't want to make any changes or adjustments for you. But in the event that they did something and it's not happened really before, and or maybe it did happen before, but you didn't say anything about it, like, well, you could tell me and obviously vent to me and get all that like anger and probably excess emotion that you don't want to project onto them. Like, you can just give it to me because I'm not going to take it personally. Like, I don't care. But like, now you need to advocate for yourself. You need to tell that person that like, hey, what you did, it doesn't match up with what my expectations are, or it's not something that makes me comfortable. And, you know, then we get to see from that reaction whether or not that person is a reasonable person, or whether or not that person is right for you. I think a lot of times there's buildup, and we don't ask those. We don't advocate for ourselves early enough in relationships, and that's why sometimes it gets so bad and so toxic because you didn't create the boundary when you needed to. And then I was gonna say something else, but I don't know. I don't remember.
There's something I did want to add to that, which is I feel like the best thing that you can do as a friend to somebody who's asking you for some sort of relationship advice or anything like that is to be there as a friend. And by that I mean, like you were saying, like maybe the situation is really highly emotional for you and you don't want to blow up on the person. Yeah. You don't want to throw all that energy at them and cause something that you might not be able to reverse. For me, for example, when I'm very emotional, I cannot have a conversation with you when I'm highly emotional, because if I'm angry, I'm going to say something to try to hurt your feelings. Like, that's just how I am as a person. Like, it's not, so I'm not going to want to say something to hurt you if you're somebody I care about. I don't want to do that. So sometimes you just need to come and like be that person that friend can vent to. Exactly. You need to be that person who can just kind of bear that for them. And I think one of the best things I've done for my friends, like repetitively, is like I have trouble sometimes conveying my words and conveying how I feel without like really thinking it through. So like I'll say things and it's like, it's not what I mean to say, but that's just how it comes across. And I think a lot of people have that issue. So being that kind of like a proofreader, if that makes sense. Like I've had so many friends come to me and be like, this is the issue I have. Can you help me put this into words? So that I can convey this in like a respectable manner. And that's normally what the advice is. It's never like, I think you should do this. Who am I?
The only thing I would say that I like adamantly try to I try to express this constantly, is if you're gonna have this conversation, please do it over the phone or in person.
Yes.
The texting wars that some of y'all be having,
The paragraphs.
it's no one is reading your novel.
Words are easily misconstrued.
That also, like, they can ignore you, which they do. Which they do, and when they do ignore you, it's only gonna piss you off more. So wait until the evening time or whenever you can see them again, and to have this conversation where you have things thought out and you can just say it verbally, and they can give you a response that's on the spot, like their honest opinion, as opposed to you sending, you did this and it made me feel like this, and they literally might be like, not today, and not respond. And rightfully so, because if someone sends me a novel, I really might look at it and be like, I'm not with it today. I'm not with it. Like, I'm sure what I did was wrong, but like, who's doing this? Like, I'm not gonna get into the texting World War III with you over some minor discrepancy that got you all worked up, you know. Like, we can talk about this like over the phone. Like, if I get into a texting argument, like at this point, it's because I don't care, and the argument is going to be pretty short, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be like, yeah, no, this is over with.
Like, we're not doing this
after this conversation. Like, we're probably not going to text ever again, you know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. But you know, we don't have much time because it is getting kind of late. So thank you for the viewers who've watched to this point. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Follow us on IG. We have a link in the bio, and tell us if you have any more topics that you'd like for us to expand upon, or
anything you want to hear more of.
Literally.
Anything that we've said that's like you might not agree with or might agree with. This is a quote unquote safe space.
Quote unquote.
So let's communicate in a calm, kind, and respectable manner, please.
Yeah, because we got some hate comments.
Yeah.
We got roaches.
That was so crazy.
What did they say? Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
There was another one that was like, actually, it has some cuss words in it. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, we won't say the curse words. It was very mean. I was like, was that necessary?
It was actually so crazy.
Hold on, we got 3 roaches, and the comment was hidden. That's how you know it was bad.
I saw that.
It was like, hold on. Oh, it was just like, shut your dumb, up. Nobody gives a. Right?
No, literally, it's like, genuinely, this is a safe space, y'all. And so, like, if any of y'all see comments like that and it like discourages you from saying anything, like, also, like, just tell us too. Like, if there's something we talk about that you're really interested in or anything like that, just in a calm, respectable manner. Because
literally.
Some things are just rude for no reason.
I know, that was just like,
that was like so uncalled for.
I was like, dang, I was like, we have haters now like this?
It was on something so small. It was literally you just saying like, if I'm out with my girls, I'm out with my girls. Like, that was it.
Well, what was the roaches for? What does that mean?
I think that was
anti-black.
That was definitely racially motivated.
But they couldn't put like monkey emojis, so they were like, what's like the next worst thing we can do? Pick roaches.
I'd rather you have called me a monkey than a cockroach.
Fair.
Respectfully.
Fair. But that's all we got for y'all today. Thank you so much for watching.